Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Tuesday, September 10th meeting of the Regional Parks and Trails Committee. I will note that we have directors Arbor and Melior online with us. And I would like to start the meeting by acknowledging that we are gathering on the unceded traditional territory of the Comox First Nation. And would just like to acknowledge the historical trauma that the parks system may have had on First Nations communities, and that we do this work with consideration of that, and alongside our partners at the Comox Nation. So we have an agenda in front of us, and the first item is resolution status report. Thank you. All in favor, or sorry, anyone opposed? Seeing none, that's carried. And our one and only item is the updated Regional Parks and Trails Strategic Plan final draft. Thank you. And Scott, are you going to speak to that first?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will introduce Mark Harrison, our Manager of Parks, and Mark will be introducing the staff report. And the final draft of the Regional Parks and Trails Strategic Plan document. So Mark, over to you. Just the
no, sorry.
Sure.
Great. Thank you, James, through the chair and to the committee. It's very nice to see everyone again. It's been, I think May was the last time we convened this committee. I would like to note that Kate Evans, who is a consultant from Lanark, is virtually with us here today. So at the end of my presentation, she will be available to help with answer any questions or comments on the final draft of the strategic plan, if there are any. So if we could bring up the PowerPoint, that'd be great. Thank you. So on the agenda today, I just wanted to do really kind of quick, high level, so we can get into the kind of discussions and gather your feedback on the final draft plan. But for the agenda, we've got really quickly look at the process review, where we're at, and look at the work that we have done since our last meeting in May. They'll look at the highlights that we revised the document on, just looking at the major highlights, and then we will look at next steps in the process. So we've all seen this diagram before. So we are here. The little arrow has moved almost to the end of phase 3. So we are getting close to the finish line, and the objective is to have a final plan to this committee in November. So since our last meeting in May, we have completed our key reviews. We have received feedback, and we made revisions to the draft plan, this final draft plan that is being presented today is based on that feedback that we've heard. Specifically, we met with and we received feedback from Comox First Nation Chief Council. We sent the draft plan to the interest groups for further comment. We did send the draft plan to government agencies and relevant government bodies for comment. And we worked really closely with the working group to tweak the document to ensure that all the municipal feedback from the staff level was captured. So plan revision highlights. So basically the nuts and bolts of the work that was done since our last meeting was really to refine the draft plan. To clarify the changes that we made within that document, we did have a drafted table of revisions that's included within the staff report, and it captures the 14 key revision areas that were made to the document. 10 of those revision items were more minor in nature. They related to the formatting, to the flow of the document, and to ensure consistency throughout the document. And then 4 of those items were a bit more significant and worthy of just a quick little overview here today. So of those 4 major highlight revisions, The first one was related to Comox rights and interests. So throughout the document, we did refine the language to better reflect Comox rights and their interests as per the feedback that we heard from Comox Chief and Council. Secondly, we captured the existing areas in a more succinct and transparent fashion within the document. So we did add an action item to clarify consideration for existing parkland or conservation areas that may not be adequately protected and may be better managed under the Regional Park Service. Of note, any land that would be considered would still need the approval of this committee in terms of meeting the service establishment bylaw, which outlines all the voting requirements for acquisition. So that would all still stand. And then related to that as well, we did incorporate some language into the P1 and the P2 documents, which I will talk to you really briefly about next here. So the P1 document relates to land acquisition process. It was pretty much a placeholder in the first draft, and through this final draft, we were able to develop it further. So that document, it was developed following consultation with Comox and through various discussions that we had within the working group. The process clearly lays out the importance of Comox, and it recognizes their interest in independently acquiring lands for their own purposes. So the document is clear that the regional park land acquisition process is separate and is distinct from Comox land acquisition processes. So this document, it really provides that roadmap or the starting point for the discussion of our future land acquisition strategy. So it will be tested and it will be refined through that future land acquisition work. The document basically, that P1 document basically sets out a 6-stage process to help us determine the services acquisition priorities. Stage 1 would be to compile and to categorize potential park and trail candidates for which Comox has not identified an independent interest. The second stage would refine that focus to key candidates. So basically filters the list that's established in stage 1. Stage 3 would be to evaluate and prioritize those key candidates. And that would be using the P2 document, which is our evaluation criteria and rating framework. Stage 4 would be to identify specific parcels and to develop initial acquisition details. Stage 5 would be doing actually negotiated acquisitions once the RPTC provides a mandate for us to proceed. And then stage 6 is basically just an ongoing continual review of those key candidates list to ensure that the list is relevant and it remains opportunistic. The P2 document is the last revision that I want to just highlight. And that was further developed and further refined. So that tool will help to evaluate park and trail opportunities, and it really provides that relative assessment of acquisition opportunities. We have 20 criteria that got captured, categorized into 3 principal categories. Those are environmental value, recreation and cultural value, and then community and social value. And then there's the second step evaluation that would capture kind of the feasibility of criteria. So for the principal categories, each criteria would be rated from a 0 to a 5, and then the category itself would then get a total point score, and then each category would be weighted to highlight the relative importance. So the first category, environmental values, would be weighted at 40%. Category 2, the recreation and the cultural values, would be weighted at 40%. And then category 3, the community and social values, would be rated at 20%. And that weighting there is really to help us determine how a particular area or a site aligns with the vision and the goals that we're establishing for the service. And then this would be coupled with the second part, which is to evaluate the feasibility of an acquisition, and that would also be rated on a point system. So there are, many ways to approach that and how we evaluate sites. But the working group does feel that this is an appropriate strategy, and it can be reviewed and it can be adjusted as needed through the land acquisition process. So next steps. So following this meeting, the final draft will be referred to the community for a final comment. That referral will run for 4 weeks and run until October the 9th. Following that, we'll be meeting with the working group to discuss any further edits that come back based on feedback that we hear from the community today and from what we hear from the final public review. We will then present the final plan to the RPTC in end of November. And upon adoption of the plan, we will look at doing presentations to each of the municipalities as well as the CBRD board with the document. So I realize that was very quick overview, but we're happy to discuss any sections of the strategic plan in more detail if you like. And I look forward to your comments and your feedback. So both Kate and I are available for questions.
Thank you so much for that overview. Questions, directors? Go ahead, Director Hardy.
Thanks. And I'll bring it up again. I've brought it up in the past with regards to, again, the consideration of Seal Bay Park and Mount Jeffrey Park, two of the Comox Valley jewels, being included into the Regional Park Service moving forward, I think is, again, based upon what Mark has described as values in consideration for bringing in a piece of property into the Regional Park Service. I would think that both those parks fall under those values. So I just, again, put that out there for, again, consideration moving forward. The other item I have was with regards to the amount of time the community has for providing feedback or the 4-week community referral, and whether or not that time needs to be extended past 4 weeks. 4 weeks is not very long. So I just put that one out there as well for consideration.
Thanks. Did staff want to respond to the referral time or?
Yeah, I'm happy to respond. So the document has gone through an extensive engagement process with the community. We have had a number of open houses, and a lot of that feedback that we heard was incorporated into this draft plan. So, you know, at a staff level and based on feedback from the consultant, we feel that 4 weeks is sufficient.
Thanks. Any other questions, comments? Whoop.
Maybe I could just
Yeah,
ask
sure.
through to Mark, what would be the effect of a longer public referral period if the committee was to extend that to a longer time? Would there be, I know that you're intending to bring this back to the committee as a final document in fall, is that in November?
End of November.
End of November. So, and there would have to be some lead time just for final changes, but what would be the effect of a longer referral time if we had to consider that?
I think if that would happen, then it would basically push all our timelines into the new year in terms of adoption of our strategic plan, which then would push back the land acquisition strategy, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay. How to follow up? Go ahead.
I guess my question would be, how long have we been working on this Regional Park Service? And if we extended the communication with regards to the referral another 4 weeks, in the big picture of things, is it that big of a deal?
I think that's up to the committee. If the committee wants to do that extension, then we can certainly accommodate that. But like Mark says, then we would be looking into the new year for the final document and moving on to the next steps of the land acquisition strategy.
Okay, how do I go to the people online?
Just let-
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead, Director Miller.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, thanks.
Excellent. First, I just want to say thank you to staff and to everybody who is involved in developing this. I feel really excited by this plan. I think it's really well done. I have just a couple of questions. The first one is about biodiversity and restoration. I didn't see those things very present in the plan, but I know that they would be things on your mind. So I'm just wondering if you could speak a little bit to how you would ensure kind of the high quality of some of the conservation areas and the restoration when needed, and how that might best be reflected in a plan like this.
Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, through the chair, I'm happy to start on that, and then maybe Kate can jump in as well. But the biodiversity and the ecological values are captured through the through the P2 document, the evaluation criteria, and so there are a number of points within that criteria that speak to ecological values. So while we're looking at candidate sites, that will get captured through that P2 document. Kate, did you want to jump in on that?
Sure, thank you, Mark, and through the chair. I can add maybe just briefly. I really appreciate the comments, Director Mayer, and I think you're right that we've had certainly those principles in mind, and we heard it through engagement at various levels with the committee for sure, and with interest groups for sure, and also with general public. How it's represented in the plan, and I think it's accurate to say that those are not the words at the forefront. And part of that is we recognize this is a new service for the regional district, and in terms of sustainable funding and how that is to be used, the initial steps or the scope of the active conservation and restoration that can take place is going to require partnerships with others to implement the kind of earlier stages of what's outlined here, whilst still being aspirational, does have a little bit of a limit that we foresee in terms of what the kind of funding can support. And so initially it's trying to get to protect lands that are otherwise unprotected. And then I think in future, after some of those, after the system has lived and been established for some time, that's where some of that funding internally or the partners could help probably to supplement the more forward aims and active and high quality work and the actual active restoration to further the protection of those lands.
Thank you. I think I would still really love to see like the word biodiversity, at least in the vision statement or somewhere a little bit higher up, but I understand kind of your thinking. Second one is another philosophical question. And the third question I have is a really easy one. So the second one is just about parks management versus park stewardship, and why that choice to go with management instead of stewardship throughout.
Kate or Mark?
Yeah, maybe I'll pass that one on to Kate as well.
Sure. Thanks, Mark, and through the chair. That's a good and fair question. We didn't specifically have the discussion about that terminology used, and probably my simplest and plainest answer is that is a little bit just the lexicon and terminology, but we have been shifting in other areas, and I think can certainly consider, as this is a new aspect and service for the region, if that kind of language shift is something that should go along with it.
Thank you for that discussion, Director Grieve. Oops, sorry. Sorry,
That's
Director Millier, did you have another?
This was my easy one. I had some kind of specific feedback throughout, and I was just wondering what the best way to share that would be. That was my easy question. I'm all done. Thanks.
Thank you. How would you like to handle that?
Yeah, I mean, I guess you could write us an email, I guess, would be probably the most succinct way. I'm also open to a call if you prefer that.
Through the chair, and Mark, are you okay if I add that if it's specific and small items throughout a tract changes, comments to a word to the PDF document itself or something like that, if that's a really easy way to keep track of it, as another consideration.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. And now we'll go to Director Grieve.
Thanks very much. And it's a terrific report. Something to put you to sleep at night if you want to read 150 pages of a report on parks, but very well done. And I myself participated in a few of the open houses, et cetera, et cetera. But this is kind of new ground and something we've been talking about well, since there was a regional park function one time. And then it was sort of disbanded. One thing I was just going to ask, I guess through the staff, was I'm very intrigued on page 54 about the about creating a Parks and Trail Foundation to accept donations of parkland, because I can tell you that a couple of the biggest and greatest parks, new parks that we put into play at the regional district, both came out of the blue. There were donations, one from Patty Evans up at Oyster River that included the salmon hatchery, and another one, Ameris Park, which is down at the end of Tasman Road, that basically were donated for a tax receipt. So I think that we have to remember that with all this criteria that basically you have to seize the opportunities as they present themselves, as they arise, because quite often these things don't present themselves until somebody decides to bequeath land or whatever. And I do think that we have to be able to react quickly on that. I know there's one donor trying to give us a park, and he's amazed it's taking 2 years for him to actually get the paperwork done to donate a park for us. So, you know, that could certainly be something with our new regional park system that might be worth keeping in mind, because you just don't know what's coming at you. The other thing I wanted to ask, well, actually, just going back to the Parks Foundation, how exactly would that work? Would it be an actual foundation that we would create through the regional district, or would it be a kind of a semi-autonomous society, or how is that being envisioned?
Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, through the chair. I think at this stage, we haven't really figured that out in terms of what that would exactly look like. So I think that's something that we would just work through once the strategic plan is completed and adopted. There is an action item in there to look at that. And so at that time, I think staff would further explore that option.
Yeah, don't look a gift horse in the mouth. No offense to horses. The other one, yeah, when you talk about blue access and access to swimming holes, et cetera, we did have a kind of a preliminary item on our work plan that was working with MOTI to identify rights of way down to the Solom River and the Puntledge River. Because anybody who grew up and remembers when you used to go down there and jump in the water. And of course, now there's private property signs up, but like many private property signs, they're actually up on the provincial government right-of-ways. They're not private property at all. So we kind of dropped it, I think, off the list in 2017 or 2018 or so. But I think that's something worth reviving. Freshwater swimming is you know, really important. I know we always run up against private property owners that don't like the intrusion, but you know, much like our beach access report that we had, I think 2016, where we identified all the road ends leading up to the foreshore, Georgia Strait, and some are appropriate, some are not. Some had chicken coops built on them, some had trails. So I do think that that's something else we should highlight along the way here too, is access for swimming. I think is very important. So that's my 2 bits.
Thank you for that, Director. Any other questions or comments on the report? Okay, seeing none. There's a recommendation there.
Receipt.
Oh, we didn't vote on receipt. Let's vote on receipt. Any opposed? Seeing none.
Move it.
Thank you. Thank you. And any opposed to that recommendation? Seeing none, we're done. Thank you all so much. Do we need a motion to adjourn? Yes. Thank you. and seconded. And any opposed to that? Don't think so. Thank you.